Do pine trees keep their needles forever?
Pine needles occur in groups, called fascicles, of 2 to 5 needles. A few species have only one needle per fascicle, while others have as many as 8. Regardless of the number of needles, a fascicle forms a cylinder of short shoots that are surrounded at their base by small, scale-like leaves that usually fall off after 1 year of growth. The needle-bearing fascicles are also shed a few at a time, usually every 2 to 10 years, so that any pine tree, while appearing evergreen, has a complete change of needles every 2 to 4 years of less.
Where are the organs of equilibrium located?
The organs of equilibrium are located in the inner ear. The otolith organs are located in the vestibule of the membranous labyrinth. They consist of sheets of hair cells covered by a membrane that contains otoliths. Ear stones, which are calcium carbonate crystals. The otolith organs sense linear acceleration of the head in any direction, such as acceleration due to changing the position of your head relative to gravity or acceleration in a car or amusement ride. The inner ear also contains horizontal, posterior, and anterior semicircular canals, which sense angular motions, acceleration, of the head. Each semicircular canal has a specialized sensory region that contains hair cells. And each canal is important for sensing rotation of the head in a different primary direction. For example, the horizontal semicircular canal receptors are sensitive to rotating the head leftward and rightward.
Which U.S. states recycle the most per year?
There are differences in the amount each state recycles. California recycles the most tonnage per year.
What is meant by vectors in medicine?
A vector is an animal that transmits a particular infectious disease. A vector picks up disease organisms from a source of infection, carries them within or on its body, and later deposits them where they infect a new host. Mosquitoes, fleas, lice, ticks, and flies are the most important vectors of disease to humans.
Who was the first programmer?
According to historical accounts, Lord Byron's, 1788 to 1824, daughter, Augusta Ada Byron, 1815 to 1852. The Countess of Lovelace, was the first person to write a computer program for Charles Babbage's analytical engine. This machine was to work by means of punched cards that could store partial answers. that could later be retrieved for additional operations and would then print the results. Her work with Babbage and the essays she wrote about the possibilities of the engine established her as a kind of founding parent of the art and science of programming. The programming language called Ada was named in her honor by the U.S. Department of Defense. In modern times, Commodore Grace Murray Hopper, 1906 to 1992. Of the U.S. Navy, is acknowledged as one of the first programmers of the Mark I computer in 1944.
What information can a forensic scientist determine from a human hair?
A single strand of human hair can identify the age and sex of the owner. Drugs and narcotics the individual has taken or used, up to 90 days previously, and through DNA evaluation and sample comparisons, from whose head the hair came.
What contributions did John and William Bartram make to botany?
John Bartram, 1699 to 1777, was the first American-born botanist. He and his son, William Bartram, 1739 to 1823, traveled throughout the American colonies observing the flora and fauna. Although John Bartram never published his observations, he was considered the authority on American plants. In 1791 his son William published his notes on American plants and animals as Bartram's Travels.
How is mutation rate calculated?
The mutation rate is generally expressed as the number of mutations per cell divisions, per gamete, or per round of replication.
What is the sunspot cycle?
It is the fluctuating number of sunspots on the Sun during an 11-year period. The variation in the number of sunspots seems to correspond with the increase or decrease in the number of solar flares. An increased number of sunspots means an increased number of solar flares.
How was it discovered that microorganisms are effective against bacterial infections?
British microbiologist Alexander Fleming, 1881 to 1955. Happened upon the discovery of penicillin's use as an antibacterial agent. In 1928 Fleming was researching staphylococci at St. Mary's Hospital in London. As part of his investigation, he had spread staphylococci on several petri dishes before going on vacation. Upon his return he noticed a green-yellow mold contaminating one of the petri dishes. The staphylococci had failed to grow near the mold. he identified the mold as being of the species of Penicillium notatum. Further investigation proved that the staphylococci and other gram-positive organisms are killed by P. notatum. It was not until the 1940s that Howard Florey, 1898 to 1968, and Ernst Boris Chain, 1906 to 1979, rediscovered penicillin and were able to isolate it for medical use. In 1945 Fleming, Florey, and Chain shared the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine for their work on penicillin.
Which elements are the hardest and softest?
Carbon is both the hardest and softest element, occurring in two different forms as graphite and diamond. A single crystal of diamond scores the absolute maximum value on the Knoop hardness scale of 90. Based on the somewhat less informative abrasive hardness scale of Mohs, diamond has a hardness of 10. Graphite is an extremely soft material with a Mohs hardness of only 0.5 and a Knoop hardness of 0.12.
What is a controlled substance?
The Comprehensive Drug Abuse Prevention and Control Act of 1971 was designed to control the distribution and use of all depressant and stimulant drugs and other drugs of abuse or potential abuse. Centrally acting drugs are divided into 5 classes called Schedule I through V.
What are the upper and lower shells of a turtle called?
The turtle, order Testudinas, uses its shell as a protective device. The upper shell is called the dorsal carapace and the lower shell is called the ventral plastron. The shell sections are referred to as the scuettes. The carapace and the plastron are joined at the sides.
What is the significance of On the Origin of Species?
Charles Darwin, 1809 to 1882, first proposed a theory of evolution based on natural selection in his treatise On the Origin of Species. The publication of On the Origin of Species ushered in a new era in our thinking about the nature of man. The intellectual revolution it caused and the impact it had on man's concept of himself and the world were considered by many to be greater than those caused by the works of Isaac Newton, 1642 to 1727, and other individuals. The effect was immediate. The first edition sold out on the day of publication, November 24, 1859. Origin has been referred to as the book that shook the world. Every modern discussion of man's future, the population explosion, the struggle for existence, the purpose of man and the universe, and man's place in nature rests on Darwin. The work was a product of his analyses and interpretations. of his findings from his voyages on the HMS Beagle. In Darwin's day, the prevailing explanation for organic diversity was the story of creation in the book of Genesis in the Bible. Origin was the first publication to present scientifically sound, well-organized evidence for the theory of evolution. Darwin's theory was based on natural selection in which the best or fittest individuals survive more often than those who are less fit. If there is a difference in the genetic endowment among these individuals that correlates with fitness, the species will change over time and will eventually resemble more closely, as a group, the fittest individuals. It is a two-step process. The first consists of the production of variation, and the second of the sorting of this variability by natural selection, in which the favorable variations tend to be preserved.
How do bacteria reproduce?
Bacteria reproduce asexually, by binary fission, a process in which one cell divides into two similar cells. First, the circular, bacterial DNA replicates, and then a transverse wall is formed by an ingrowth of both plasma membrane and the cell wall.
What are some newer forms of portable storage media?
External hard drives are similar to the internal hard drive of the machine, with storage capacity of up to and beyond 2 TB. Often using a USB port to connect, they provide an easy alternative for backup storage. Compact discs, CDs, and DVDs are optical storage devices. There are three types of CDs and DVDs: read-only, write-once, CDR and DVD-R, and rewritable, CDRW and DVD-RW. Although read-only CDs and DVDs are wonderful for pre-packaged software, they do not permit a user to save their own material. CDRs store 700 megabytes of data and can be written once. DVD-Rs are similar to CDRs, except they hold 4 to 28 times more data. Single-disc DVD-Rs are available that can store 4.7 GB of data or 2 hours of video. Read/write CDs use a different chemical compound which allows data to be recorded, erased, and rewritten. Solid-state storage technology has no moving parts. One example is flash memory sticks. All cells are set to 0 on the memory chip before data is stored in a flash memory stick. When data are entered, electric charges are applied to certain cells. These charges pierce a thin layer of oxide and become trapped. The trapped charges become ones. The binary code pattern of zeros and ones is stored into the memory. Flash memory sticks are available with up to 64 GB of storage, providing large amounts of easily transportable storage.
How large is the prostate gland?
The prostate gland in healthy adult males is about the size of a walnut. It is located in front of the rectum and under the bladder. The prostate surrounds the urethra. When it becomes enlarged, it squeezes the urethra, restricting the flow of urine.
What is German silver?
Nickel silver, sometimes known as German silver or nickel brass, is a silver-white alloy composed of 52% to 80% copper, 10% to 35% zinc, and 5% to 35% nickel. It may also contain a small percent of lead and tin. There are other forms of nickel silver, but the term German silver is the name used in the silverware trade.
How many species of insects are there?
Estimates of the number of recognized insect species range from about 750,000 to upward of 1 million, but some experts think that this represents less than half of the number that exists in the world. About 7,000 new insect species are described each year. But unknown numbers are lost annually from the destruction of their habitats, mainly tropical forests.
How did the electrical unit watt originate?
Named for the Scottish engineer and inventor James Watt. 1736 to 1819, the watt is used to measure electric power. An electric device uses 1 watt when 1 volt of electric current drives 1 ampere of current through it.
What are the Jovian and terrestrial planets?
Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune are the Jovian. The adjectival form for the word Jupiter, or Jupiter-like, planets. They are giant planets, composed primarily of light elements such as hydrogen and helium. Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars are the terrestrial. Derived from terra, the Latin word for earth, or earth-like, planets. They are small in size, have solid surfaces, and are composed of rocks and iron.
What is a dietary supplement?
According to the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act, DSHEA. A dietary supplement is a product taken by mouth that contains a dietary ingredient intended to supplement the diet. The dietary ingredient may include vitamins, minerals, herbs, or other botanicals. Amino acids, a dietary substance to supplement the diet by increasing the total dietary intake. or a concentrate, metabolite, constituent, or extract. They may be in any form: tablets, capsules, liquids, gel caps, or powders. The chia places dietary supplements in a special category under the general umbrella of foods, not drugs, and requires that every supplement be labeled a dietary supplement.
Why don't woodpeckers get headaches?
Woodpeckers' skulls are particularly sturdy to withstand the force of the blows as they hammer with their beaks. They are further aided by strong neck muscles to support their heads.
What is the chemical composition of the ocean?
The ocean contains every known naturally occurring element plus various gases, chemical compounds, and minerals. Below is a sampling of the most abundant chemicals.
What is unusual about the teeth of sharks?
Sharks were among the first vertebrates to develop teeth. The teeth are not set into the jaw but rather sit atop it. They are not firmly anchored and are easily lost. The teeth are arranged in 6 to 20 rows, with the ones in front doing the biting and cutting. Behind these teeth, others grow. When a tooth breaks or is worn down, a replacement moves forward. One shark may eventually develop and use more than 20,000 teeth in a lifetime.
How long can an orange tree produce oranges?
An average orange tree will produce fruit for 50 years, but 80 years of productivity is not uncommon. And a few trees are known to be still producing fruit after more than a century. An orange tree may attain a height of 20 feet, 6.1 meters. But some trees are as much as 30 feet, 9.1 meters, high. Orange trees grow well in a variety of soils but prefer subtropical settings.
How fast does a snail move?
Many snails move at a speed of less than 3 inches, 8 centimeters, per minute. This means that if a snail did not stop to rest or eat, it could travel 16 feet, 4.8 meters, per hour.
How many constellations are there and how were they named?
Constellations are groups of stars that seem to form some particular shape, such as that of a person, animal, or object. They only appear to form this shape and be close to each other from Earth. In actuality, the stars in a constellation are often very distant from each other. There are 88 recognized constellations whose boundaries were defined in the 1920s by the International Astronomical Union. Various cultures in all parts of the world have had their own constellations. However, because modern science is predominantly a product of Western culture, many of the constellations represent characters from Greek and Roman mythology. When Europeans began to explore the southern hemisphere in the 16th and 17th centuries, they derived some of the new star patterns from the technological wonders of their time, such as the telescope. Names of constellations are usually given in Latin. Individual stars in a constellation are usually designated with Greek letters in the order of brightness. The brightest star is Alpha, the second brightest is Beta, and so on. The genitive, or possessive, form of the constellation name is used. Thus Alpha Orionis is the brightest star of the constellation Orion.
What is the largest group of insects that has been identified and classified?
The largest group of insects that has been identified and classified is the order Coleoptera. Beetles, weevils, and fireflies, with some 350,000 to 400,000 species. Beetles are the dominant form of life on Earth, as 1 of every 5 living species is a beetle.
What are the highest and lowest recorded temperatures on Earth?
The highest temperature in the world was recorded as 136 degrees Fahrenheit 58 degrees Celsius at El Aziziyah, El Aziyah, Libya. On September 13, 1922, the highest temperature recorded in the United States was 134 degrees Fahrenheit 56.7 degrees Celsius. In Death Valley, California, on July 10, 1913. The temperatures of 140 degrees Fahrenheit 60 degrees Celsius at Delta, Mexico. In August 1953 and 136.4 degrees Fahrenheit 58 degrees Celsius at San Luis, Mexico, on August 11, 1933, are not internationally accepted. The lowest temperature was -128.6 degrees Fahrenheit -89.6 degrees Celsius at Vostok Station in Antarctica on July 21, 1983. The record cold temperature for an inhabited area was -90.4 degrees Fahrenheit -68 degrees Celsius at Oymyakon, Siberia, population 4,000. On February 6, 1933. This temperature tied with the readings at Verkhoyansk, Siberia. On January 3, 1885, and February 5 and 7, 1892. The lowest temperature reading in the United States was -79.8 degrees Fahrenheit. -62.1 degrees Celsius, on January 23, 1971, in Prospect Creek, Alaska, for the contiguous 48 states. The coldest temperature was -69.7 degrees Fahrenheit -56.5 degrees Celsius at Rogers Pass, Montana, on January 20, 1954.
What is an Alberta clipper?
An Alberta clipper is a little gyrating storm that develops on the Pacific front, usually over the Rocky Mountains of Alberta, Canada. This quick-moving storm moves southeast into the Great Plains, leaving a trail of cold air.
Why are the horse latitudes called by that name?
The horse latitudes are two high-pressure belts characterized by low winds about 30 degrees north and south of the equator. Dreaded by early sailors, these areas have undependable winds with periods of calm. In the northern hemisphere, particularly near Bermuda, sailing ships carrying horses from Spain to the New World were often becalmed. When water supplies ran low, these animals were the first to be rationed water. Dying from thirst or tossed overboard, the animals were sacrificed to conserve water for the men. Explorers and sailors reported that the seas were strewn with bodies of horses, which may be why the areas are called the horse latitudes. The term might also be rooted in complaints by sailors who were paid in advance and received no overtime when the ship slowly traversed this area. During this time they were said to be working off a dead horse.
Which species have been removed from the endangered species list because they have recovered?
"22 species have been removed from the endangered species list because they have recovered. The status of 7 species has been changed due to taxonomic revision. New information has been discovered for 4 other species.
When was the first plant patent issued?
Henry F. Bosenberg, a landscape gardener, received U.S. plant patent number 1 on August 18, 1931. For a climbing or trailing rose.
What are dust mites?
Dust mites are microscopic arachnids, members of the spider family. Commonly found in house dust. Dust mite allergen is probably one of the most important causes of asthma. Breathlessness and wheezing caused by the narrowing of small airways of the lungs, in North America, as well as the major cause of common allergies. Exaggerated reactions of the immune system to exposure of offending agents. Thorough, regular cleaning of the home, including the following measures, will help control dust mites, Clean all major appliances such as furnaces and air conditioners. And change filters as recommended by the manufacturer. Launder bedding every 7 to 10 days in hot water. Use synthetic or foam rubber mattress pads and pillows. Cover mattresses with dust-proof covers. Clean or replace pillows regularly. Keep moist surfaces in kitchen and bathroom clean and free of mold, vacuum and dust. Often, a high-efficiency particulate air filter, HEPA, vacuum is especially effective.
How many muscles does it take to produce a smile and a frown?
"17 muscles are used in smiling while the average frown uses 43.
What is the effect of a microburst on aircraft?
Microbursts are downbursts with a diameter of 2.5 miles, 4 kilometers, or less. Often associated with thunderstorms. They can generate winds of hurricane force that change direction abruptly. Headwinds can become tailwinds in a matter of seconds, resulting in a loss of airspeed and loss of altitude. After microbursts caused several major air catastrophes in the 1970s and 1980s. The Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, installed warning and radar systems at airports to alert pilots to wind shear and microburst conditions.
What elements are common to all types of microscopes?
Three elements are needed to form an image: a source of illumination, a specimen to be examined, and a system of lenses that focuses the illumination on the specimen and forms the image.
What is the precession of the equinoxes?
The precession of the equinoxes is the 26,000-year circular movement of Earth's axis. It is caused by the bulging at the equator, which makes Earth's axis twist in such a way that the North and South poles complete a circle every 26,000 years. Every year when the Sun crosses the equator at the time of the equinox, it is in a slightly different position than the previous year. This movement proceeds eastward until a circle is completed.
What is the difference between zero gravity and microgravity?
Zero gravity is the absence of gravity, a condition in which the effects of gravity are not felt, weightlessness. Microgravity is a condition of very low gravity, especially approaching weightlessness. On a spaceship, while in zero microgravity, objects would fall freely and float weightlessly. Both terms, however, are technically incorrect. The gravitation in orbit is only slightly less than the gravitation on Earth. A spacecraft and its contents continuously fall toward Earth. It is the spacecraft's immense forward speed that appears to make Earth's surface curve away as the vehicle falls toward it. The continuous falling seems to eliminate the weight of everything inside the spacecraft. For this reason, the condition is sometimes referred to as weightlessness or zero gravity.
How often is the epithelium replaced?
Epithelial cells are constantly being replaced and regenerated during an individual's lifetime. The epidermis, outer layer of the skin, is renewed every 2 weeks. A totally new epidermis is produced every 25 to 30 days. The epithelial lining of the stomach is replaced every 2 to 3 days. The lining of the respiratory tract is only replaced every 5 to 6 weeks. The liver, a gland consisting of epithelial tissue, easily regenerates after portions are removed surgically.
What is the difference between cubic zirconium and diamonds?
Cubic zirconium is a gemstone material that is an imitation of diamonds. The word imitation is key. The U.S. Federal Trade Commission defines imitation materials as resembling the natural material in appearance only. Cubic zirconium may be cut the same way as diamonds. It is very dense and solid, weighing 1.7 times more than a diamond of the same millimeter size.
What was the first National Chemical Society organized in the United States?
The first National Chemical Society in the United States was the American Chemical Society. Organized in New York City on April 20, 1876. The first president was John William Draper, 1811 to 1882.
How much garbage does the average American generate?
According to the Environmental Protection Agency, about 250 million tons of municipal waste was generated in 2008. This is equivalent to 4.5 pounds, 2.0 kilograms per person per day, or approximately 1,650 pounds, 730 kilograms, per year.
Are there clouds that form in specific areas or times of day?
Lenticular clouds form only over mountain peaks. They look like a stack of different layers of cloud matter. Noctilucent clouds are the highest in Earth's atmosphere. They form only between sunset and sunrise between the latitudes of 50 degrees and 70 degrees north and south of the equator.
When is it more economical to restart an automobile rather than let it idle?
Tests by the Environmental Protection Agency have shown that it is more economical to turn an engine off rather than let it idle if the idle time exceeds 60 seconds.
Was Napoleon poisoned?
The most common opinion today is that Napoleon Bonaparte, 1769 to 1821, Emperor of France from 1804 to 1815, died of a cancerous, perforated stomach. A significant minority of doctors and historians have made other claims, ranging from various diseases to benign neglect to outright homicide. A Swedish toxicologist, Sten Forshovbod, 1903 to 1985, advanced the theory that Napoleon died from arsenic administered by an agent of the French royalists who was planted in Napoleon's household during his final exile on the island of St. Helena.
Which woods are used for telephone poles?
The principal woods used for telephone poles are southern pine, Douglas fir, western red cedar, and lodgepole pine. Ponderosa pine, red pine, jack pine, northern white cedar, and western larch are also used.
How does a rock differ from a mineral?
Mineralogists use the term mineral for a substance that has all four of the following features. It must be found in nature, it must be made up of substances that were never alive, organic. It has the same chemical makeup wherever it is found, and its atoms are arranged in a regular pattern to form solid crystals. Although rocks are sometimes described as an aggregate or combination of one or more minerals, geologists extend the definition to include clay, loose sand, and certain limestones.
What is unusual about Amanita mushrooms?
Some of the most poisonous mushrooms belong to the genus Amanita. Toxic species of this genus have been called such names as death angel, Amanita phalloides, and destroying angel, Amanita virosa. Ingestion of a single cap can kill a healthy, adult human. Even ingesting a tiny bit of the amatoxin, the toxin present in species of this genus, may result in liver ailments that will last the rest of a person's life.
How did geology influence Darwin?
while traveling aboard the HMS Beagle. Charles Darwin. Read The Principles of Geology by Charles Lyell, 1797–1875. Catastrophism was the popular theory of the time about the forces driving geological change. Lyell's theory suggested that geologic change was not solely the result of random catastrophes. Rather, he proposed that geologic formations were most often the result of everyday occurrences like storms, waves, volcanic eruptions, and earthquakes that could be observed within an individual lifetime. This idea, that the same geologic processes at work today were also present during our evolutionary past, is known as uniformitarian. This conclusion also led Lyell and, before him, James Hutton, 1726–1797, to suggest that Earth must be much older than the previously accepted age of 6,000 years. Because these uniform processes would have required many millions of years to generate the structures he observed. Reading Lyell's work gave Darwin a new perspective as he traveled through South America and sought a mechanism by which he could explain his thoughts on evolution.
What are monoclonal antibodies?
Monoclonal antibodies are artificially produced antibodies designed to neutralize a specific foreign protein, antigen. Clone cells, genetically identical, are stimulated to produce antibodies to the target antigen. Most monoclonal antibody work so far has used clone cells from mice infected with cancer. In some cases they are used to destroy cancer cells directly. In others they carry other drugs to combat the cancer cells.
What is hydroponics?
This term refers to growing plants in some medium other than soil. The inorganic plant nutrients, such as potassium, sulfur, magnesium, and nitrogen, are continuously supplied to the plants in solution. Hydroponics is mostly used in areas where there is little soil or unsuitable soil, since it allows precise control of nutrient levels and oxygenation of the roots. It is often used to grow plants used for research purposes. Julius von Sachs, 1832–1897, a researcher in plant nutrition, pioneered modern hydroponics. Research plants have been grown in solution culture since the mid-1800s. William Garrick, 1882–1970, a scientist at the University of California, defined the word hydroponics in 1937. In the 50 years that hydroponics has been used on a commercial basis, it has been adapted to many situations. NASA will be using hydroponics in the space station for crop production and to recycle carbon dioxide into oxygen. Although successful for research, hydroponics has many limitations and may prove frustrating for the amateur gardener.
What does the expression tiling the plane mean?
It is a mathematical expression describing the process of forming a mosaic pattern. A tessellation, by fitting together an infinite number of polygons so that they cover an entire plane. Tessellations are the familiar patterns that can be seen in designs for quilts, floor coverings, and bathroom tile work.
What is the safest way to view a solar eclipse?
Punch a pinhole in an index card and hold it 2 to 3 feet, 0.6 to 0.9 meters, in front of another index card. The eclipse can be viewed safely through the hole. Encase the index card contraption in a box, using aluminum foil with a pinhole, and you'll see a sharper image of the eclipse. You may also purchase special glasses with aluminized mylar lenses. Damage to the retina can occur if the eclipse is viewed with other devices such as photographic filters, exposed film, smoked glass, camera lenses, telescopes, or binoculars.
How dangerous is Clostridium botulinum?
The bacterium Clostridium botulinum can grow in food products and produce a toxin called botulinum, the most toxic substance known. Microbiologists estimate that 1 gram of this toxin can kill 14 million adults. This bacterium can withstand boiling water, 212 degrees Fahrenheit or 100 degrees Celsius, but is killed in 5 minutes in 248 degrees Fahrenheit 120 degrees Celsius. This tolerance makes Clostridium botulinum a serious concern for people who can vegetables at home. If home canning is not done properly, this bacterium will grow in the anaerobic conditions of the sealed container and create extremely poisonous food. The endospores of Clostridium botulinum can germinate in poorly prepared canned goods. So individuals should never eat food from a can that appears swollen, as it is a sign that the can has become filled with gas released during germination. Consuming food from a can containing endospores that have undergone germination can lead to nerve paralysis, severe vomiting, and even death.
Who first proposed the kingdom protista?
The German zoologist Ernst Haeckel, 1834 to 1919, first proposed the kingdom protista in 1866. For the newly discovered organisms that were neither plant nor animal. The term protest is derived from the Greek term protistos, meaning the very first.
How many sweat glands are present in the body?
Sweat glands are present on all regions of the skin. There can be as many as 90 glands per square centimeter on the leg. 400 glands per cubic centimeter on the palms and soles, and an even greater number on the fingertips. Collectively, there are over 2 million sweat glands in the adult human body.
What was the first technical report written in English?
Geoffrey Chaucer's 1343 to 1400 treatise on the astrolabe was written in 1391.
How much energy is required to use various electrical appliances?
The formula to estimate the amount of energy a specific appliance consumes is wattage x hours used per day, / 1,000 equals daily kilowatt hour, consumption. To calculate the annual consumption, multiply this amount by the number of days you use the appliance during the year. The annual cost to run an appliance is calculated by multiplying the kilowatt hour per year by the local utilities rate per kilowatt hour.
Does catgut really come from cats?
Catgut, an absorbable sterile strand, is obtained from collagen derived from healthy mammals. It was originally prepared from the submucosal layer of the intestines of sheep. It is used as a surgical ligature. The major advantage of minimally invasive surgery is that it is less traumatic to the patient. There is less scarring, and recovery time is much quicker. Hospital stays are shorter.
Is a halo around the sun or moon a sign of rain or snow approaching?
The presence of a ring around the sun or, more commonly, the moon in the night sky indicates very high ice crystals composing cirrostratus clouds. The brighter the ring, the greater the odds of precipitation and the sooner it may be expected. Rain or snow will not always fall, but 2 times out of 3. Precipitation will start to fall within 12 to 18 hours. These cirriform clouds are a forerunner of an approaching warm front and an associated low-pressure system.
When was the first module of the International Space Station launched?
The first module of the International Space Station was launched by Russia in November 1998 following many years of planning. The Space Shuttle Endeavour brought the first U.S.-built module to the space station in December 1998. A second Russian module arrived in July 2000 followed by the first crew in December 2000. The members of the first crew to live in the space station were Sergei K. Krikalev and Yuri P. Gajenko from Russia and William M. Bill Shepard from the United States. Construction of the International Space Station is expected to be completed in 2011 and will, hopefully, be operational through 2015.
What is the difference between weather and climate?
Weather is the current condition of the atmosphere. Climate is the long-term average weather for a particular place or region. Often a 30-year average, although also calculated for 10-year averages. Climate describes the average weather pattern of a locale. Climatic elements include precipitation, temperature, humidity, sunshine, wind velocity, and other measures of weather such as fog, frost, and other storms.
What is the cell theory?
The cell theory is the concept that all living things are made up of essential units called cells. The cell is the simplest collection of matter that can live. There are diverse forms of life existing as single-celled organisms. More complex organisms, including plants and animals, are multicellular cooperatives of many kinds of specialized cells that could not survive for long on their own. All cells come from pre-existing cells and are related by division to earlier cells that have been modified in various ways during the long evolutionary history of life on Earth. Everything an organism does occurs fundamentally at the cellular level.
How are genes physically found in a specific genome?
Finding one gene out of a possible 30,000 to 40,000 genes in the human genome is a difficult task. However, the process is made easier if the protein product of the gene is known. As an example, if a researcher is looking to find the gene for mouse hemoglobin, he or she would isolate the hemoglobin from mouse blood and determine the amino acid sequence. The amino acid sequence could then be used as a template to generate the nucleotide sequence. Working backward again, a complementary DNA probe to the sequence would be used to identify DNA molecules with the same sequence from the entire mouse genomic library.
Who made the first golf shot on the moon?
Alan B. Shepard Jr., commander of Apollo 14, launched on January 31, 1971, made the first golf shot. He attached a 6-iron to the handle of the contingency sample return container, dropped a golf ball on the moon, and took a couple of one-handed swings. He missed with the first, but connected with the second. The ball, he reported, sailed for miles and miles.
How is the age of a fish determined?
One way to determine the age of a fish is by its scales, which have growth rings just as trees do. Scales have concentric bony ridges or circuli, which reflect the growth patterns of the individual fish. The portion of the scale that is embedded in the skin contains clusters of these ridges. Called annuli, each cluster marks 1 year's growth cycle.
Who developed the poliomyelitis vaccine for polio?
Immunologist Jonasi. Salk, 1914 to 1995, developed the first vaccine, made from a killed virus, against poliomyelitis and is known as the man who defeated polio. In 1952 he prepared and tested the vaccine, and in 1954 massive field tests were successfully undertaken. 2 years later immunologist Albert Sabin, 1906 to 1993, developed an oral vaccine made from inactivated live viruses of 3 polio strains. Currently, an inactivated polio vaccine, IPV, is given as an injection at ages 2 months, 4 months, 6 to 18 months, and a booster at 4 to 6 years.
How is patient-controlled analgesia, PCA, administered?
This is a drug delivery system that dispenses a preset intravenous, 4 dose of a narcotic analgesic for reduction of pain whenever a patient pushes a switch on an electric cord. The device consists of a computerized pump with a chamber containing a syringe holding up to 60 milliliters of a drug. The patient administers a dose of narcotic when the need for pain relief arises. A lockout interval device automatically inactivates the system if the patient tries to increase the amount of narcotic within a preset time period.
Who is associated with developing the concept of wind chill?
The Antarctic explorer Paul A. Sippel, 1908 to 1968, coined the term wind chill in his 1939 dissertation. Adaptation of the explorer to the climate of Antarctica. Sippel was the youngest member of Admiral Richard Byrd's Antarctica expedition in 1928 to 1930. And later made other trips to the Antarctic as part of Byrd's staff. And for the U.S. Department of the Interior assigned to the U.S. Antarctic expedition. He also served in many other endeavors related to the study of cold climates.
What is the difference between passive solar energy systems and active solar energy systems?
Passive solar energy systems use the architectural design, the natural materials, or absorptive structures of the building as an energy-saving system. The building itself serves as a solar collector and storage device. An example would be thick-walled stone and adobe dwellings that slowly collect heat during the day and gradually release it at night. Passive systems require little or no investment of external equipment. Active solar energy systems require a separate collector, a storage device, and controls linked to pumps or fans that draw heat from storage when it is available. Active solar systems generally pump a heat-absorbing fluid medium, air, water, or an antifreeze solution, through a collector. Collectors, such as insulated water tanks, vary in size. Depending on the number of sunless days in a locale. Another heat storage system uses eutectic, phase changing chemicals to store a large amount of energy in a small volume.
What are the functions of stems?
The four main functions of stems are, 1. To support leaves, 2. To produce carbohydrates, 3. To store materials such as water and starch, and 4. To transport water and solutes between roots and leaves. Stems provide the link between the water and dissolved nutrients of the soil and the leaves.
What is sound and what unit measures it?
Sound is the vibration of air or other matter. Sound intensity refers to the energy of the sound waves. And loudness refers to the interpretation of sound as it reaches the ears. Both intensity and loudness are measured in logarithmic units called decibels, dB. A sound that is barely audible has an intensity of 0 decibels. Every 10 decibels indicates a tenfold increase in sound intensity. A sound is 10 times louder than threshold at 10 dB and 100 times louder at 20 dB.
What is the meaning of the medical abbreviation NYD?
Not yet diagnosed.
What is the average size of a virus?
The smallest viruses are about 17 nanometers in diameter. And the largest viruses are up to 1000 nanometers, 1 micrometer, in length. By comparison, the bacterium Escherichia coli is 2000 nanometers in length. A cell nucleus is 2800 nanometers in diameter, and an average eukaryotic cell is 10,000 nanometers in length.
What is a miner's canary?
Miner's canary refers to the birds used by miners to test the purity of the air in the mines. At least 3 birds were taken by exploring parties, and the distress of any one bird was taken as an indication of carbon monoxide danger. Some miners used mice rather than birds. This method of safety was used prior to the more sophisticated equipment used today.
What was unusual about the original Celsius temperature scale?
In 1742, the Swedish astronomer Anders Celsius, 1701 to 1744, set the freezing point of water at 100 degrees Celsius and the boiling point of water at 0 degrees Celsius. It was Carolus Linnaeus, 1707 to 1778, who reversed the scale. But a later textbook attributed the modified scale to Celsius and the name has remained.